So just about every day I get a new email into my inbox from some music-related AI company that wants me to check out or demo one of their products or their software platform, and I had all but swore off anything to do with AI until I got this email in from Positive Grid. They wanted me to check out a new amplifier that they're putting out that has some pretty powerful AI tools integrated into it. And I thought it'd be an interesting kind of way to tiptoe into this world, this amalgamation of AI and gear products, to see what it's all about, to kind of see where companies' heads are at with it, and to see how the user would be able to interact with AI when it comes to these sort of products. So we're going to check out the new Positive Grid Reactor 50 here. I'm going to share some thoughts down the way about what I think and how I feel about this whole AI integration into gear. And we'll just kind of go over this new release from Positive Grid. I'd love to hear your thoughts below as it pertains to AI specifically and how you find it. Is it useful? Is it something that you're excited about? Is it a thing that you could see the value in, or are you pretty turned off by it? Would you rather kind of lean old school and just have an amp and some pedals in front of you here? Let's check it out today. But before we do, if you're new to the channel here, thanks for watching. Please subscribe below, and again, drop any questions or comments you've got down there and we'll chat. So I want to start by honing in on the foundation of this Reactor 50 before we even get into any of the technology or the AI focused features. At its core, it is a really fairly compact, sleek looking 1x12 combo. It's lightweight, it's portable, and it has some nice features and controls right on the face of it. So you've got a full set of controls like you would in the amplifier that gives you your selection for the model of amp that you want and sort of a varying degree of gain. You've also got a gain control, a 3-band EQ with bass, treble, and mid, and then a volume control. And then you've got an effects section too that allows you on the face even to dial up and do some coarse adjustments to 6 categories of effects. All of this is more fine-tunable and controllable and tweakable in the app, which we'll get to down the way, and in the sound samples. You've also got the ability to save up to 8 presets on the face of the amp and recall those with buttons on that control panel. There's also a section among the controls that allows for 2 features to just fine-tune the feel and the response of the amp without doing wild adjustments to the gain or the overall texture of the amp. The first is a 3-way toggle that adjusts between a more pushed sound that's more aggressive and biting or a smoother kind of pulled back warmer sound. There's also a 5-way heat toggle that allows you to do some things to the tone to help cut through the mix and just kind of gives some presence and life to the amp, or again kind of rounds that out a little bit on the other side of it. So let's start by hearing some foundational clean sounds of this amp in a setting that I found to really like with a deluxe reverb style amp and some reverb, and then we're going to walk through those 2 amp intelligence settings along with a steady progression through some different gain ranges with some of the different amp models that you have access to. I'm going to be playing a Gretsch Electromatic Premier Jet throughout this video, and we're running right into the Reactor 50 mic'd up with a Warm Audio WA87 mic. Let's check it out. There's a few other things of note about the Reactor 50 as an amplifier. You can run it in 1 watt, 25 watt, or 50 watt mode, so it does give you a bit of flexibility in terms of volume, depending on what context and space you're in. We've been running it at the 25 watt mode throughout this video here in the studio. It can get pretty loud, but it's still fairly manageable as I'm sitting right next to it here. You also have an effects loop on the back of the amp if you want to integrate that into the equation. You've got a MIDI input if you want to control any of the sounds or features via MIDI. There's also the ability to add a Positive Grid foot switch to the amp to help with some remote control of presets and other navigation. And so with that, let's take a deeper look into the app as we kind of navigate the different types of effects that you can add in and around your amp sounds. I've found as I've made this video that the app is a really pretty fluid experience. I think it's one of the strengths of this whole package that you get some nice sounds across the different amp models and a number of different effects that you can do some tweaking to and add or subtract as you're creating your preferred sound. So let's hear some of those effects that you have access to across a number of different categories there, whether it be overdrive, delay, modulation, reverb. Let's check it out. The last thing we're going to touch on here is the AI piece of this whole equation. And it comes in the form of a tone creator chatbot that is part of the app. You can essentially input a prompt via pictures, a description. You need to do sound samples and videos as well to kind of prompt the chat to start creating this tone or the signal chain that you've got in your head. So the sky's really the limit with this. You can input, a verbose chat description about the tone or the gear that you want to make up your rig, or you can go super abstract and literally take a picture of, a nature scene or something around your room or your house and see what the chat comes up with. It's kind of wild. It's a little bit weird at times, but I wanted to start by something that was pretty familiar to me so I could kind of discern the output. And I asked it to create a kind of gritty Americana sound along the lines of a Ryan Adams guitar tone. And here's what it came up with. So that's just a first look of this new Positive Grid Reactor 50, and I wanted to end by sharing some of my thoughts after experiencing it here in the studio for the last week or so. There's definitely some things to love about this amp. There's for sure a context and a target audience for this amp too, and there's some of the things that kind of left me wanting more or a little bit underwhelming to me. So we'll dive in and just kind of share some of those thoughts here, and again, I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts if anything stuck out to you. But from my experience, the sounds that you can find in this amp are really pretty great. And if you're someone who wants the breadth of options and sounds that a modeler gives, it certainly hits on a number of the classic sounds, whether it be the clean tones from like a deluxe reverb, you get AC30 tones, a lot of the Marshall and higher gain stuff. You just have the whole gamut of sounds. And I think that with some tweaking and some time, you can get some good sounding tones out of this setup, and it allows for a number of different possibilities there. One thing I would love to see is a larger category of effects. I think that kind of starts to reveal some of the weaknesses in this amp that I'll get into, but by being limited to those 6 effects categories and generally about 4 different specific effects within each category, you're left with sounds that they don't get too far out of the kind of normal expected kind of classic sounds. And sometimes for me, a player who gets into more of the ambient world or maybe some lo-fi or experimental sounds, you just don't really get access to a lot of those types of sounds. I'm thinking about things like a random modulator to do a more lo-fi sounding thing, certain types of overdrive textures, or maybe more ambient or experimental delays or reverbs. You're just kind of limited to the classics, whether it be analog and digital delay, a few different categories of reverb like plate and hall. It could really expand the possibilities of this amp to have some more specific and more niche type effects in some of those categories. And I think that leads me to this AI piece where you have this tool, the chatbot, where you can ask it and prompt it to create your rig and your sound. And I wanted to just kind of see what that was about and flex that a little bit. What you didn't see in the video is the probably 2 hours or so that I've spent with it to try and really get a great outcome from my chat inputs. And, I think what, again, it reveals is that you can get a pretty good starting point depending on how specific and how granular you get with your prompts. I'm sure that there's a way you can kind of get out what you're hoping for within the last 10% or so. And maybe it requires some tweaking on the back end too. But I think you really have to be someone that is interested in approaching tones and sounds in that way, that you're someone that wants to have a dialogue with the chat about what you're interested in. Maybe you're a newer player just kind of starting out in the world of effects, and it's more convenient for you to kind of name some of those inspirations or those albums that you're wanting to mimic as a starting point. I don't really think it's a tool that players like myself who have spent years and years diving into effects and sounds and signal chains and things are going to find a lot of satisfaction in. I think it's been more frustrating for me than enjoyable and satisfying. It's taken a little bit longer to generate those rigs and sounds than I expected, 45 to 60 seconds. And so in that time, I feel like I could probably just, call up a couple effects that I have in my head and do some tweaking and get to the end result quicker. But again, this is most certainly not meant for me in terms of products and target audiences. And so if you're someone who really is curious and does want to tap into a whole breadth of different sounds and signal chains and vibes and do it relatively quickly and with some assistance, then this could be a useful tool for you. I'd again love to see just an expansion of the breadth, and I'd love to see some more of those weird kind of experimental sounds, whether it be in amp models or effects, to allow for the prompts to kind of reach and utilize more specific and more niche kind of sounds and effects. But as of now, I think the products of the chat and the inputs and things have been fairly generic to my ears, and ones that I think you'd really have to go in and tweak and refine at least a little bit to get to at least the sounds that I'm wanting in my head. So there's some feedback there. I think, again, this product is for a certain person. The Reactor 50 is for a certain player on a certain point in their journey, most likely. But at the core of it really is an amplifier that sounds pretty great. It is a compact, pretty versatile amp that could be useful at home or for practice or for small gigs or things like that if you are limited in budget and need to have a bunch of different sounds on tap. So I think it's worth checking out. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you're someone who's gravitating more towards that app-driven experience and the just endless amount of tweaking and customizing via the app. I think that piece of it was pretty fluid and pretty easy to use. And so that's the Positive Grid Reactor 50, some sounds from it, some thoughts about it. I'd love, again, to hear your thoughts and reactions down below in the comments about any of this that we've covered, and we'll see you on the next one.